particular box right there without the burlap and the sawdust. Now, my recommendation for you guys is if you do build these are only 3/8 holes down here in the front. They're okay, but going 1/2 inch, 5/8, or even 3/4, or even maybe an inch won't hurt. That gives it more ventilation. Like with Gordon using the garden hive, those things got a lot of ventilation. So, Cody, do you have a question?
Yeah, the standard champagne cork is 7/8.
Yeah.
So on all my hives, whether they're top bars or long boxes, and my quilts that on my one Wari hive, Wari calls them a quilt. If there's too much, I just plug it with a champagne cork.
Right.
Because I can buy a bag of champagne corks for $5.
You don't drink the bottles?
No.
He's really good. I'd like to make a comment about your ventilation holes. I did make this one due to your presentation last year, and I used a smaller holes. And afterwards, after looking at them through the winter, I had one hive that did have a lot of moisture in it because the hive was the area down below flooded, and so it had a lot of moisture in it. And I would definitely suggest a lot larger holes, 3/4 or even bigger. Somebody brought in another one of these that had this large.
I did. Big holes.
Yeah.
And
I think they're extra half holes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, this box here was probably one of the first ones we built a number of years ago, and absolutely, I think you're better off to go bigger. You know. Now, how did it flood?
A lot of rain, and it's the placement of the hive. It just, it's low spot, and never did it before, and we had one of those hard rains through the winter.
The other thing that you want to do too on that placement of hives in the winter with rain is tip them forward. Lift them up in the back an inch or so and tip them forward. Yes.
Now, you put those holes on along 4 sides, or just?
No, I just put them on the 2 long box sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
Screen bottom board.
And you can go all the way around them if you want to. It's not that ventilation issue isn't going to hurt them. It just won't.
I think if you have screen bottom boards, then why would you tip it?
Well, not with a screen bottom board. But see, we don't run the screen bottom board. We run the solid boards. And not on all of them. We do have some screen bottom boards. We still run the solid boards. And we just tip them ahead.
I say, when I build my bottom board, I taper them
Yeah.
so that they're always tipped.
Yeah. Now, do you run the solids?
No,
Oh.
I started to, but then that was what my
And you know,
jig
over the
was.
years, we haven't really noticed a big difference in them, but there is a difference. Yes.
So if you're using a candy board, can you use these?
Yep.
Like how are you?
How does it go in there?
Yeah, like this, I'm just curious because I use candy boards, but I don't know how to get it.
Well, with Dan's, can you put a candy board in?
I don't think it can. That's the reason why I use a winter padding.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. It'll
Okay.
be real self-explanatory, but on the bottom side of this right here, what I did is I stepped it, that screen is going to step it. Can you see the bottom of that?
Yes.
It's stepped. There's
Okay.
about 1.5 inches. So that's how that candy board is incorporated on top of the
Okay.
hive.
So you're doing that on top of the candy board then?
Yep.
Okay,
There'll be a series of slides in here that you'll see how we put it on.
perfect.
Suzanne, and then the next thing you want to make sure you do is add a reducer. Here again, we're starting to put them on now because of the yellow jackets. But no later than the end of October when you close them up, close that entrance down to about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. Keep the mice out, and it keeps the wind out, the rain out. But you got to remember that if you do put that reducer on that hive, now I had a guy that I was mentoring last year, and here again, this was my fault, because I thought he would have known this. Once that reducer goes on, you've got to go through every month or two and take that reducer off, and you got to scrape those dead bees out of that box. Because the dead loss through the winter is going to plug up that hole. Once that hole gets plugged up, they can't come out and do their cleansing flight. And when they get that, they'll defecate inside the hive and it'll kill the hive. So even though you got that reducer on there, come through in the winter months, and they don't, those bees don't like it when you stick a stick in their hive. But just take a stick and just drag the dead ones out. Keep that open in the winter.
You know, one thing I've heard recently is having it flip the other way. You know, like I've always had the introducer flip so that the opening is down.
Yep. Turn them up.
And you mentioned just flipping it up so that it was less likely to get clogged with the dead bees. I always kind of thought it was easier if it was down for them to drag the dead things out.
Yeah, but they don't.
Because they don't have to drag it.
You see, that first go in November of the dead loss, you know, for the summer bees that are dying.
Yeah.
There's such a tremendous amount. When the mites get in there or disease hits them and they die all at once,
Yeah.
they just plug it up. The problem with that, turn it upside down, I don't think you want to get the members in the aspect of not cleaning it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
But
it
yeah,
would
you
be a
could turn
substitute.
it.
I would think it would be a
Yeah.
substitute for checking on it.
Right, you could turn it upside down. Good idea. Number 10 is get your hives up off the ground. We live in a real wet climate. It rains 6 months, 7 months out of the year. If they're up off that ground, that moisture isn't there. Suzanne and Peter did a good job on theirs. Now, we use stands for ours, different wooden stands, but get them up off the ground that, 16, 18 inches.
William Pittman had a better idea than us. He used 4 blocks, 2 layers of 2, and then he took some valley sheeting, which is aluminum, and he cut the corners of it off so he didn't cut his legs, and he made that about 2 inches overhang on all 4 sides of the block, and then put his his 2x4s on top of that. And we found that was a much more convenient height to manipulating boxes than ours. The downside is that if he goes 3 cube supers and then supers, he's up at this kind of level, whereas we're still around here.
Well, hell, I'd like to have some of those, just those levels. We got to get up on a step ladder. I'm serious.
Tailgate is big up.
But if we
That's
would
nice.
do it again, there'd be two concrete blocks high, not this one.
Yeah. Dan?
I have a neighbor whose family does bees in Hungary, and they keep their beehives about 6 or 7 feet off the ground. It's because there's that cold, damp layer of air that just kind of hugs the ground. And we've all seen it where the fog kind of lays in the morning sometimes, and it's their idea to get the bees out of there, and they say they do a lot better. They fly earlier, and they just perform a lot better. So that's what they do. And so I think the higher you can get them up, reasonably, there's got to be, common sense involved, probably the better.
There's 2 questions.
Do you use the upper entrance?
We've got a couple of them that we have on hives that we use, and they work very well. I wouldn't discourage them at all, but most of ours are lower. And then I take that 3/4 inch drill bit, or 7/8 or whatever, and I put a hole right here for ventilation issues and another entrance. Not on all of them, but we've got them fixed that way. Get it?
I live right on the Square River, so the river sometimes lives on me.
Yeah.
I adopted using old barbecue frames. I take the barbecue off of it, sort of reinforce it.
Yep.
It keeps the mice down, and it's hopefully got them above what the old river will come up.
Instead of cutting a hole in your hive box, you've got a top board that has a notch in it, wouldn't that work for the ventilation?
Yeah, you can do that. But sometimes what we look at, and I know with Grant and I, when we're putting honey supers on, 1 or 2 ain't enough. You got to put 3 or 4 honey supers on, get them boxes up about this size, so you got to have a step ladder to get up on. And without a top entrance, it's a long ways from here to here. So we just went through it.
Yeah, that has never happened to me, so.
Yeah.
Or after you put 2 on, stagger them a little bit. And
Yeah.
make an actual entrance.
Yeah, same thing. So, and I think for the most part, most people have got their boxes off the ground, from what I've seen over the years. You know, they put them on some sort of stand, or milk crates, or pallets, or whatever. Some people put them on their back porch. Not me. So, the moisture control box, the goals that we're going to try and get with that, and we've achieved that, is insulate, ventilate, control the moisture, and then you're able to feed the bees through that. And then we're going to create that wind and moisture break also. Okay, next one. So if you want to make these, you can go down to the hardware store, 1x4 or 1x3, but 1x4 is the best. And if you've got old honey supers that are 4-inch, they work great. You can use 6-inch too.
This is up on the website now under the members classes link. If you look at fall management and withering, this is right there.
But basically, you're just going to make the box the same height, same size as the hive. So you're going to use hardware cloth, burlap, wood screws, tin snips, stapler, your cedar shavings. And here again, these are true cedar shavings in this one. The last few years, we bought kennel shavings, and they're a Tennessee red cedar, aren't they, Grant? And you know, they're a little bigger, and you'll see some of it in some of the next slides. They're bigger, they got a little different smell to them, but they seem to work. And unless you know somebody that does a cedar shake mill, or can get the cedar shavings, they're kind of hard to come up with.
Yeah, you can get it at Walmart.
The cedar shavings?
Yes.
Oh.
I got some here a couple of years ago, at one of the farm stores.
Yeah,
There
Dell's.
it goes.
Tractor
It's what they use for
Tractor.
mating.
Yeah, yeah.
Animals and stuff,
Yeah.
they're red cedar, you know.
I go to the Petro Park at Walmart and have it in a bale.
Grant, you're falling asleep up there if we pay attention where they're getting these shavings. That's your job.
Kippert's Corner, there in Tumwater, sells them in the big bales,
Oh,
cedar shavings.
I got mine at the tractor store last year.
tractor store?
You know,
And they're cedar, they're not the big chips?
You can get cedar or you can get pine.
You see their pine, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
I get mine
So,
with
Kevin.
a planer.
Yes,
My planer is running a lot right now, so I've got a lot of sawdust coming, but it's not cedar. Does it have to be cedar?
well, it probably wouldn't have to be, but for some reason, bees like cedar,
They do, okay.
you know.
They're hopeful. The bug still.
What's that?
Some other bugs still.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, we used the 15-pound roofing paper. And you want to do that, when you go to cut this hardware cloth, make sure you got a pair of gloves on. The little pokies hurt.
So I went around through Chehalis and even parts of Australia trying to find 1/8-inch hardware cloth. And Sunbirds is the best way to go. Yeah. The ace value, they don't have it. Home Depot doesn't have it.
Yeah, Sunbirds
They do
carry.
Dairy Gold or the farm store. has it.
Farm store, that's where I get mine, yeah.
Yeah,
Farm store.
Olympia Supply.
Because a lot of them have 1/4-inch, but not the 1/8-inch.
right.
Olympia Supply has it.
Who?
Olympia Supply.
Olympia Supply. Now, the other thing too is this was done a number of years ago, so these prices I'm sure have changed, but when we first started making these things, they didn't cost very much, to make. So they've probably gone up a little bit because everything's gone up, so. Anyhow, next one. So there's your answer right there for the bottom when you feed them. You see this step in it? So my wife is really good at folding and cutting and doing all that stuff, but my fingers just don't work like they're supposed to. So that's her job. She folds them up and she lays them in there, and then I come along with a stapler and I staple them. If you look, I get that staple gun right down here at the bottom to make that nice and straight.
I cut little strips and just screwed them in and then just cut a piece, set it in there,
Yeah.
and then cut thin strips and just tack them in,
Right.
so you don't have to bend it.
Right. So that's the bottom, and so that goes on top of your hive. So your candy board sits right on top of your frames. And that much room in there, you got plenty of room for that candy board. And the thing that's nice about this eighth inch cloth is in the winter, if you do want to look at your bees real quick, they can't get you because they can't get through that screen. So you don't have to put a veil on. Next one.
So your inner cover goes under that,
On top.
on top of that?
Yep, you'll see. So this is the inside of it, okay? And on these ventilation holes, you can see if they're just drilled right through the screen on that one, which is okay, not gonna hurt anything. Next one. That's just showing those holes on the side. Again, don't use that 3/8. Go to a 3/4, 7/8, something bigger, 1 inch even. Get more ventilation. I think the more the better. Next one. This is upside down. This shows the bottom here. This is your telescopic lid. And this is the vent holes that go in. So when you put the lid down, they're still vented. Okay, next one. This doesn't show the burlap at the bottom, but there's burlap in there, and the cedar shavings, and then the other top piece of burlap goes over this. And the burlap you can get at Walmart. Next one. Here Jeannie is, what she's doing is she's going through this. The first ones we actually made like pillows out of them, you know, we changed them out and stuff like that. And that works okay too, but it's a lot of work. So we just went over to this method here. And when you're done, they look like that up there. She just tucks them all in. So when we put them on, this was done, this series of pictures I think was 2 years ago. And I highly recommend, of course we work this way all the time. We don't work without this thing right here. I don't like getting stung. And you know, a puff or two, like Gottfried says, too much isn't good, but the right amount works just right.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
So I'm seeing your holes are kind of high on those boxes. You've got all those layers inside. Do your layers come up past those holes, or does it stop below them? Your top burlap. Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, because see, those holes
Those are
there
pretty
are actually
narrow. Okay.
that far below the burn.
Okay.
So when we do this, we always smoke them, and when I feed them every 3 months through the winter, or put more candy in there, I still smoke them. Because when you open those up in the wintertime, they get kind of pissy. So smoke them down. Next one. A lot of times this is what you should see this time of the year. You know, that's a full box of these. And the next slide, after you smoke them, it looks like that. So that smoke does help, you know. Now, here again, this candy board is 2 of them. And what we use that commercial cookie sheet that's probably, I don't know how deep it is, 3/4 of an inch deep, I guess. We fill that up, that's 5 pounds of sugar. What I would normally do is I would take one of these and put on one hive and leave one on this side. So we snap that in half, 2.5 pounds per box.
Yeah, if you have 2 of those, it's, unless you couldn't put your normal top on.
Yeah, this will fit.
That would fit, but a normal top wouldn't.
Yeah, normal top.
Top,
No, like Dan's moisture box.
Right.
It won't. So this particular one has 5 pounds on it, and I think that one, if my memory serves me right, lasted till January. And then it was just little bitty pieces of it.
But if they have enough honey and stuff stored, they won't eat it down.
Oh, they'll still eat it, but they won't eat it as fast.
No.
And the other thing that's going to make a big difference is the type of weather we have. The warmer the weather, the more active they are. The colder, the less active. Next one, Suzanne. So, how do you make that candy board that I've been talking about? Well, I see you got to change. That I use 1 1/8 cup total of water. I use 5 pounds of cane sugar. 2 tablespoons of Honeybee Healthy. And that Honeybee Healthy is the stuff that we make. We don't buy it anymore because it's like $100 a gallon.
I think it should be about 5260 Suzanne.
For what?
No, I take ours to 250.
If you
you get it too hot, it'll be real brittle.
Yeah.
230 says for hard candy on that thermometer, it's right
What?
around
Yeah.
260 degrees, and I would take it up to that.
Do you take yours to 260?
Because, you know, it's gonna take a while for that to set up if you don't. But your candy thermometer's got, what the boil, it's right around 260, 262, somewhere in there.
Okay. Okay. So Steve uses the 260. I've always boiled them to 250. We add in, with the Honeybee Healthy, a teaspoon of Duravet. You get that at the farm store, it's vitamins and electrolytes.
You've got these recipes on the website, right?
Huh?
You've got the recipes on the website,
Yeah.
right?
And then we boil it to 250 degrees, and I don't do it in the house on the stove. No.
Just a comment for those that are going to be making it for the first time, unless you've got a really powerful propane flame or something, it takes a lot of heat to get it from like 220 to 250.
I use, if
You gotta
any
heat
of you
it
are
fire.
familiar with a crab cooker, propane jet burner, that's what I use. I can do one in like 5 minutes. Peggy?
Can we buy them from you? This is too much like cooking to me.
What was that?
Can we buy them from you? Anything that has more than like 3 ingredients, I just don't do. So, seriously.
Seriously, yeah. Suzanne?
Well, we actually did it on the stovetop.
Yeah.
You
And
can.
it worked fine. I mean, we wore heavy aprons, we made sure the cats were all locked up so they couldn't get underfoot, and we had heavy leather gloves on. You know, just
But it still takes quite a while. A lot of heat has to go into that.
Yeah.
But it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Oh, yeah. It just,
Candy
has
element
a
or
very
something.
One other thing that makes it easy, I made ours the first time last year, is I bought one of those $25 infrared thermometer.
Oh, yes.
And it's so much better than trying to get the thing in at
Yeah.
temperature.
Yeah. Because I still use the old manual thermometer. And when we get started, you know, I set up for it, we do it in the garage, and we try and get them all done one day, and, you know, we kind of go through a process of doing it. And the biggest thing that I found is you don't want to heat it up too quick because you'll burn it or score it. The best thing is I never quit stirring it, you know. And Jeannie, I have her add in, because what I do is I take a cup of water, and then I take an eighth to a third of a cup, maybe at best, and then I add these into that and I stir them up. And I put this in when it hits about 240. I dump it in, and then I stir it up, and then I take it out and pour it. So, and then you just pour it in a pan and in deep pans. The other thing we do is we line those deep pans with parchment paper. Don't use wax paper.
No.
Yeah, I did that first time too. That's horrible.
Those last a long time.
Yeah. The homemade Honeybee Healthy, this saves you lots of money. If you buy the Honeybee Healthy, I don't know what it is now, what, $89 a gallon? It's expensive. It's just stupid, and you can, Cody?
Lecithin granules. If you buy the liquid, do not use 1/8 of a teaspoon. Use 1/16 of a teaspoon.
Okay.
Because it's in liquid form.
Right.
And if you use 1/8 of a teaspoon, it's way too much,
Yeah.
and not good.
The only difference between this recipe and the one that you get in the store for $90 a gallon is, and I get this confused every time I try and say it, is sodium lauryl nitrate. And it's a cancer-causing agent that they put in shampoos, toothpaste, soaps, shampoos, you know, for us bald guys. And it causes cancer, and it's a foaming agent. We don't use that in this here. So this is just, and this 5 to 2.5 is nothing more. It's just a delivery system, so it doesn't have to be 5 to 2.5, just 1 to 1. That's what I do anymore. I don't even screw with that. I just make it 1 to 1. I pre-dissolve that 1/8 inch a teaspoon for the lecithin, or of course Cody uses the liquid. And the lecithin granules is the emulsifier that breaks up the oil and the water. So, and the lecithin is a natural trans fat. They use it in cooking and stuff. You get it at the health food store. If you get a pound of it, it's like $3-4, and it'll last you for 100 years. You just don't use very much of it. But the biggest thing on it, if you do put it in and I stir it up and I let it sit. And then I stir it every now and then to break that trans fat up because it just doesn't want to break up. When you mix that all together, then you put it in that blender and don't use your wife's good blender. And make sure that the liquid cools before you put it in there. Ask me how I know this.
How do you know that?
I burnt the seals out of her blender. She wasn't happy. But I bought her a brand new nice one for, that does 10 times more. So I'm happy with that. But yeah, I screwed up her blender. But I got my own there. So it works. So, and then what I do is when I mix that all up, I blend it for 3 to 4 minutes. Then I just pour it in a jug and put it in the fridge. And when I just splash it in when I'm going to use it. You can make that gallon for pennies, literally pennies, instead of $90. A no boil. I don't make those. Do you make them? Anybody here made them? Dan's made them.
Kind of a derivation of it, yeah.
Oh. And I think they work fine. I like the dry sugar issue. This is kind of making a cake, so to speak, a hard cake. Just goes in, Cody.
This is more like regular fondant.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make, my wife does cakes. This is similar to fondant they put on cakes.
Right.
This is what I make.
Yeah.
So the beef experience,
And this is all on the website. So here we are. You can see this. This is the ventilation board. Here's the burlap underneath. That's on the top side of it. This is looking underneath. We're going to set that on. Next one. Now the other thing that we started doing too is you can play with that burlap for more ventilation or less ventilation. And the other thing too is if you drop these candy boards, no big deal. No big deal. You put them in there, pieces and all, they'll still. I drop them all the time.
How long are
These don't care.
more surface area for them.
candy boards?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good forever.
Yeah, when Grant and I go around in the fall and do this, I hear him go, oh shoot. And I know what happened. He's dropped those candy boards and we got to stop and we'll just put them up in pieces. So this is the burlap and we stepped it off the side for a little more added ventilation. Next one.
Is that for summertime or was that winter time?
We only put them on in the fall.
Oh, you don't use them? I left them on I took and put them on all winter, so.
Bob
the whole
Harris
summer.
does too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he leaves
And I like
his
it.
on. The only problem that I found that if you're going to do that, you probably end up with this here.
Quite a bit of Burcombe.
Yeah, they build a lot of Burcombe.
A little bit, maybe one or two, but for the most
And
part.
if you see that Burcombe, just scrape it off.
Oh, yeah.
Now here's the kennel care that Grant's been buying, and it works fine for us. We haven't had any issues with it. It's a little bigger chips. It's got that red cedar and white cedar in it.
Kevin, how wet does the cedar get?
Sometimes it can get pretty damp, but it usually is up on the top side.
Right.
Down underneath where the bees right, it doesn't seem to get there.
So most of it's soaked back down through the upper layer of the.
We've never had it, no.
I had one colony one year that the chips and the burlap was really wet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was really surprised.
But the bees were still dry.
Oh,
inside.
bees were good.
Yeah, yeah. That's the joy of this whole thing is it keeps them dry. It keeps the frames dry, the boxes dry. So we fill it up with chips, and then the next one, we're putting the burlap on. And the next one, more burlap going on a different one. We're tucking it in.
Is that just to soak up moisture?
The burlap?
Yeah, the second one?
Yeah. Yeah, the bottom one never gets wet. The top one gets wet. And the reason it gets wet is that for however it works, capillary action, the moisture comes through that box, hits that top lid, and then it sits right here. All the moisture sits on the top, and it can't get back down inside the hive. Okay, next one. And that one's done, and then we should be getting ready to put the inner lid on. There's your inner lid. Whoever asked that question, that goes on the top of this. Next one. That just shows the inner lid going down. And then I think that tape them with duct tape. Them on the right, those were in my backyard, and of course that's this stand here is a fairly tall stand, but I had to get a step ladder to get to that top. And then of course we wrap them. Now, I don't know if we'll wrap them this year, but I think it does help a little bit. The one thing that I think it does do, if nothing else, is it helps protect the boxes from the rain, you know. Yes?
Are you just using like 15-pound jar paper?
Yep, 15-pound roofing paper, about 80 inches. You can cut it off at 80 inches, that overlaps it.
Okay, thank you.
You have to worry about bees getting in there, between the paper and the hive?
Generally not. When you put it on, you know, if you don't smoke them down, if you put it on when you're doing that, sometimes there'll be a few crawl in there, but no, we've never had any. See these ventilation holes here, these are these 3/4, 1 inch, 7/8 holes that we drill in. I staple, usually there's 4 staples around.
Okay.
So they can't, because if you leave that open, they will kind of filter in a little bit, but they come right back out. So in the fall, you want to look for colony strength, hive health. That's one thing you want to look at. Colony size in numbers, whether you're going to combine it or requeen it. You're going to look for food stores, honey and pollen. And then you're going to do your moisture control. And if you follow, you don't have to follow these steps verbatim,